Hey everyone, I'm back, and there's a new campaign in Eternal. Hello everyone, and welcome to FECast episode 76, Hour of Glass, full set review. As always, with a new campaign, we will be doing a full set review for all the cards and how we think they are going to impact the metagame, and you get to see how wrong we are. I am Sunnyvale, I am back after a hiatus from Eternal, and I am joined by my co-host who kept the show running, Stormblessed. Thank you very much for keeping it going, and great job. That was some great casts you recorded earlier.
I'm glad you thought they worked out well. I was a little nervous, so we didn't have our comedic stylings, as it were. But yeah, I think everything went okay, and I'm super excited to have you back, and also to have a full new campaign, because those are a lot of fun, and new cards are obviously always welcome additions to the game.
By the way, if you didn't see the previous two casts, episode 74 and 75, shout out to Tempest Dragon King and Stormguard, who joined the cast for the Weather Council, right? Or like the Weather Report or something like that.
Weather Report, yep.
Yeah, go check them out. I had a lot of fun listening to them, probably because I did basically no work for those two, and I got to listen to, the podcast. Anyway, if you've been wondering what I've been up to, you probably haven't, but I'm going to say it anyway. I've been playing Genshin Impact the last month, and oh man, that game is fantastic. I am absolutely in love with it. But I'm back to Eternal, at least for the next week and a half. I'll be playing Eternal intensely, trying to get that qualification for Worlds. Before we get on to the full set review, I do want to go over a brief recap of Expedition. I realize that Expedition is going to be way different with the new cards, but it's worth talking about what strategies have done well in Expedition so far. So we have to look back almost an entire month, back to June 24th and June 29th, the TNE Expedition Challenges, to see what did well. Stormblessed, what does it look like was working in Expedition at least a month ago?
So it's kind of interesting because obviously Dovid soldiers were very huge, and Dovid and soldiers are still pretty huge today, because it turns out that 2-cost 4/4s are very good. But I believe back then the exciting card was Azrog on the scene, the 6-cost, like that when you attack with 2 units, you can deal 4 damage to something, and then like it dies and gives your units charge on top of your deck. It's a pretty wild card. Today, I believe the big showcase is Feln and Davia decks are kind of what, before the campaign was released anyways, I believe the number 1 deck was sort of Davia Feln, if I am not mistaken. So interesting how Expedition has changed over the time, and it'll be interesting to see how it changes even further with the new campaign.
Yeah, the thing about the Davia deck is that it has good units and good spells, right? You've got like Torgov, the 4/5, and the ambitious Mandevilla, or whatever that Mandrake is, the 5/5 that eats something.
Yeah, I love the Mandrake.
Yeah, and then of course you have all the kill spells in Shadow, draw spells in Primal, and then you get to play them again with Davia. So yeah, that definitely seems like a good deck going into whatever the metagame is going to be after this campaign. I think that Amphitheater is still like, that's a really powerful card, and like we've seen it in Throne recently, and if there's enough support for it, I think that it'll lend itself to being a very powerful deck and big player in the metagame. And then of course, as you said, Soldiers and Film. Anything else that we should really be aware of, or does that cover most of what we need to know?
Really, it comes down to that time is sort of underrepresented right now. There's Amphitheater for sure, but aside from that, like it's really the Primal game again. Everything loves Primal right now. Both Soldiers and Davia, 2 very different decks, are both playing. Well, now there's Soldier Davia as well, right? Because Davia is a soldier, which can be drawn off Dovid, so you could play them both. But yeah, I mean, Davia is really powerful, and a lot of the Primal cards are powerful. There's also like Amarak. You can play Amarak things. Houndmaster is still a really powerful card, right? So that's sort of there's sort of the aggro style with Amaraks and Houndmasters, or Amphitheaters, or all 3 of them, depending if you're trying to make a throw deck Expedition or vice versa. That just about covers it as far as Expedition goes up until now.
I guess it's worth mentioning that some of the Felm decks are also playing Shorthopper, right? In order to get a really powerful spell into the Void for Davia.
Well, Shorthopper's a Skycrag card, so there wouldn't really be Felm at that point.
Well, I think they're splashing it. If you take a look at the last deck to win an Expedition TNE, piloted by Spifferific, it is playing for Short Hopper. It's also playing Siegebreaker, which I'm not sure fits into this, but in what otherwise looks like a Felon control deck. So I think that's like another consideration in case there are any powerful spells that we should pay attention to. But I guess, spoiler, there aren't. And
Yeah.
we'll see if any cards like fit into that, the Fire Splash, or just Short Hopper strategies in general. See if there's anything that goes there. But anyway, I guess that's enough preamble. Let's get on to the good stuff. The review of all the cards in the set, and we're going to be doing this in order that they appear in the client. So if you want to follow along at home, go ahead. Otherwise, yeah, we'll be reading them out and everything. So let's get started. And it starts off with a good one, I think. The first card is League Explorer. It's a 2-cost fire 2/2 with charge. When League Explorer attacks, play a depth charge. Depth Charge is a 2-cost relic that says at the end of turn, if you have no cards in your hand, sacrifice Depth Charge to deal 2 damage to the enemy player.
Yeah, so League Explorer is really good. The obvious downside, of course, is that it's a 2-cost 2/2. So if the opponent has anything bigger than 2, it can't really get in. But it doesn't necessarily need to more than once. And of course, on turn 2, it is more than likely going to be able to get in. Because even if it's blocked, it still sort of has Overwhelm. It's sort of like a 4/2 Overwhelm in a sense that has a bunch of other various good synergy upsides. For example, cards like Rocket Blaster would love to be able to just create a relic every turn, so then you can just be turning this depth charge into a torch. And obviously, torch is better than random depth charge. It also has synergy with cards like Volk or other ways you can utilize relics, or that Stone Scar card that says if you have a relic, you get to draw a card and you take 2 damage when it attacks. And then eventually, you're going to empty your hand in an aggro deck and you're just going to ping them off for 2, 4, or 6 damage, and it's going to be great. This card has a lot of good synergy. It has a lot of good aggression, and I think the card's just a really slick design. I wish it was a Sentinel, but we can't have everything.
Yeah, I don't think that Volk is like the right type of thing going on for this. You know how I hate the 3-faction aggro decks, but there are definitely applications for this. If you can imagine just going first against an opponent that doesn't have a 2-drop and you play League Explorer, all of a sudden you have 3 depth charges and you've already hit them for 6. Yeah, they really have to mount something in order to stop that. And if you went first, then you empty your hand 1, 2, or however many turns earlier. So that's a big deal. There aren't that many cards with charge that are cheap in Eternal, so like it's kind of unique in that way. There is a 2/2 charge that has seen a little bit of play, but this is clearly much better and I think has a lot more applications. You mentioned Rocket Blaster is great for keeping the board clear, but I suspect that's not the best usage for this. I'm trying to think of things that say like when a relic goes to the void, or like when you play a relic. I know there's the street sweeper thingy or whatever, but I guess that doesn't work too well. The 1/1 flying regen. Actually, that one's probably not very good. But there's also the Sentinel Lord that says when you play a relic, your Sentinels get +1/+1. That one's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I wish this card was a Sentinel. Aside from the relic synergy or whatever, aside from just being a generically good aggro card, there is one other very important synergy that this card enables, and that is cheap charge card, as I said, really enables the attack with 2 unit strategy, right? If you have Hound Master in play and no other units, your opponent thinks they're safe, and you're not going to make a 4/4 that turn, you slam a League Explorer and you attack, really cheaply means that it's likely to be able to empty your hand just enough to trigger it 2 attacks. Or you have Amrek, you play Amrek on 2, League Explorer on 3, attack with both. You're attacking with a 4/2 Amrek and a League Explorer. This attack with 2 units thing really is improved once you have a charge unit.
Yeah, it definitely seems like a limited mechanic, like a mechanic for limited, but especially with charge units, we'll see how much of an impact it can have on constructed. And I mean, the payoffs are really good. Like the permanent buff on Amarok, or especially the Houndmaster. Holy cow, getting a 4/4. So yeah, I think this card's going to be a cornerstone of a lot of the aggro decks. It's just going to show up as 4 copies, and it's going to kill a lot of people.
So speaking of a card that's not going to be a cornerstone of aggro decks, Awakened Arsonist is a 3 and a fire for a 2/1 stealth awakened. And when Awakened Arsonist hits the enemy player, draw a card, discard at the end of your turn. So if it hits the enemy player on your opponent's turn, you'd still get to play it next turn. And has Entomb, deal 1 damage. So the play pattern with this is that you attack with it, your opponent doesn't block because they're scared of stealth. Then you get in, you draw a card. Or if the opponent kills it, you get the Entomb, deal 1 damage, and you can use that 1 damage to hit their face, and then that counts as them hitting the enemy player, so you still get to draw the temporary card. It also trades with X3s, right? If it blocks or is blocked by an X3, You can use its Entomb ability to finish off the X3. But ultimately, it feels like a 3-cost aggro unit that has 2 attack, and that seems rather weak to me.
Yeah, it does not pass the vanilla test at all. 2/1s need to cost 1 or have a ridiculous ability and cost 2. And this costs 3. So it's like kind of interesting, but I think just not big enough for it to matter.
The implication for this card is, and for all these stealth cards in general, is that it's supposed to provide a fork, right? Where you play a stealth card, your opponent doesn't know what it is. But the problem is that, especially in this faction, your other big stealth card at 3, I believe, is like, the one that either gives a rampage or the one that plays Mindfire. And I think that you just don't care what it is, right? If you have like a, if you have like a Char or something, you're going to throw it at any of these stealth units. If it's Awakened Arsonist and, they get the Entomb off, it's kind of painful, but like, it's not the biggest deal. You really don't want to hit by the Mindfire. You really want to hit by the double damage. You really don't want to give them a free rampage. So like, it doesn't provide the interesting fork of like, should I kill this? Do I need to kill this? If it was a 2/3, then suddenly it might be a little bit harder to kill. There might be a little decision there. But as a 2/1, it's just too much of the same. It just doesn't provide the interesting decision fork.
Yeah, for sure. All right, the next fire card. This one's kind of interesting. Maybe it's a 4-cost Cursed Relic, single fire, Test of Mettle. At the end of the cursed player's turn, if they didn't play a card with cost 1 or more, sacrificed Test of Mettle to deal 10 damage to them. Otherwise, increase that cost by 1. And now, when I say that this is kind of interesting, it's definitely not what you want to be doing on turn 4. But I can kind of envision a scenario where you just want to grab this out of the market and just put it on your opponent for the last 10 points of damage. It'll go off eventually, like if your opponent is out of resources. If they are, chugging along, I think you're just going to die. Like, it's not going to do anything and you're going to die. But it is kind of interesting.
The opponent is the super controlling deck that can't win until turn 20. If you play this on turn 7, it will go up eventually. Eventually everyone fails the test of Mettle. There is no way to actually pass the test because cards, eventually have a cost that will be under this. It goes if this goes on for 20 turns, this would have a cost of 20, and obviously no cards even have a cost of 19. I don't know. I think the card's ultimately not going to be great because it just feels very slow and not necessarily what aggro decks want to be doing, but it definitely could have a place. It is a significant chunk of damage. It just feels like it's not exactly when the damage would want to be done or like what you want to be doing because you have to pay for it. Doesn't invest anything into the board state. So like you can't want to play it on turn 4, as Sunny said. So you're playing like turn 7, and at that point, if your opponent's a control deck, you're either going to have won the game or they're going to have a bunch of cards in hand and can get out of the test basically. So I don't know. I don't think the card's that good.
No, I certainly don't think it's good, but like it's situationally, like it has a pretty high ceiling. If you need to get the last 10 points of damage in and your opponent can't actually deal with this, then it's probably the best market card you could get in certain situations. But I mean, does that warrant a market slot? Probably not in Throne, maybe in Expedition, but
Well, problem with Expedition is that markets are fake in Expedition.
yeah, that's true. Markets are not great in Expedition. But my point is, like, I've played so many embarrassing like burn cards and Magic in the past that I could see this being something that you might actually want access to, even if I don't think it's good.
So how does this compare to the Yeti Cookmaster test?
Yeah, Cookmaster is better than this.
Anyway, so
It's totally different.
the next card on the list is Repel Darkness. It is 2 at a time for a fast spell. It's a modal card. It has 3 options. There are a number of these 3 option cards in the set, and they're all pretty interesting. Its first option is that for 2 cost, you can draw a sigil of your choice from your deck, so it's a Seek Power effect. Or one of the units can't die this turn, or put an enemy unit or spell that was played from the void this turn on the bottom of their deck. So it's either a Seek Power, a anti-removal spell like a Protect kind of effect, or sort of anti-Reanimate or anti-Davia. And of course, in Throne, the first thing everyone saw when they saw this was, we're going to bring back Belligerent Yeti combo because we'll make it so the Belligerent Yeti can't die and then we'll twist it forever. But obviously, this is more of an Expedition-focused cast right now. And I don't know. It costs 2. That's the problem with it. It costs 2.
Yeah, I think it's probably good in that combo. I really don't think the last mode is worth anything at all. Like, there's a lot of random void hate in this set. This is not really one of them. Or like it tries to be, but it doesn't do too well. Like, if you're against Reanimator, they could be bringing multiple units back from the void and dealing with just one of them isn't great. Plus, you have to hold it up, which isn't fantastic. And if you're trying to use this to counter Davia, well, Davia has a lot of text on it. It's not just the spell from the void. Maybe you can protect a flyer this way, but it's not even that good at that point. So I think if you can use the first two modes pretty well, like, just have it for the combo finish with the second mode, and if you draw multiples, you can still use the first mode for something. Like, that seems pretty good for me in the combo deck, but aside from that, I don't think is going to see much, if any, play at all.
Yes. Outside of combo, what this card would want is it would want a mid-range deck that both cares about its units being alive and wants to get to, a significant power level. This is a 2-cost seek power, so you really have to want both of the first two modes, right? If the third mode comes up and it's like, oh man, I can blow them out, that's cool. But like, you're obviously not playing this card for the third mode. You're playing it for the first two. And while I do think that's possible, I just think it's unlikely.
Yeah, I basically have 0% for that, like it being used fairly. And let's talk about the next one. Kind of an interesting one. Lucent Guide. It's a 5-cost double time 5/5. It's a Radiant, which is going to be relevant here. It has Stealth, Ultimate, pay 7 and reveal Lucent Guide to play Illumination Wisp, then gain 1 health for each of your units. And Entomb, play 2 Illumination Wisps. I think that Ultimate is basically
nonsense.
Yeah. I mean, like, you have to reveal it, so you couldn't have attacked or blocked, and it costs a ton, and all you get is a 1/3. So, like, that's basically, like, flavor text. But just having a sizable unit that has, like, kind of a relevant unit type, if that's what you're doing, that plays 2 Illumination Wisps when it dies, that's kind of interesting. I'm definitely erring on the side of the rate just isn't good enough. You would love to have a smaller unit with that type of effect, but I don't see any good applications for this. Do you see any Stormblessed?
I mean, I really wish the ultimate said pay 6 and reveal it, because at the very least then it would curve itself where you play it on 5, next turn you pay 6, activate it, and then can attack with it even. But the fact that it's pay 7 is just like the most cumbersome of cumbersome. So like I'm super not a fan of that ultimate saying pay 7. Like even at pay 6 it would still be like very weak, but at least it would like have a story it's telling. I think the card's interesting. I do think that like, getting value off of the Entomb, right? The one of the power points of this card is that it, provides the interesting fork, right? The interesting stealth fork seems to be existing at 5, especially in Xenon, especially with some other cards in the set. We already have the last Carnosaur. We have the Slug. We used to have the 5-cost thing, but now it costs 3. I don't remember what the card that got nerfed. What's the card that got nerfed that was exceptionally busted? Elding, yeah. So we used to have Elding at 5, but obviously now we don't have Elding anymore. This card adds to sort of the 5-cost Xenon stealth deck that apparently Direwolf really wants to make a thing. The problem with the 5-cost Xenon stealth deck is that, its cards cost 5, so that's like really expensive. Maybe that's the Repel Darkness deck. It's a deck that cares about its units and wants to get high power levels. Boom, I found the mid-range deck for Repel Darkness, Sunny.
Oh my goodness. For anyone looking for actual advice, I don't think stealth is the way to go, because all of your units or having a lot of units cost on the same place on the curve is inherently problematic, and that in addition to a lot of your cards being units, especially when you can't curve them as well as you'd like.
Just being said, I do think that you don't want to play a bunch of 5-cost stealth, but I do think Lucent Guide is interesting because I think it's a reasonable body with a reasonable effect. If it dies, 2 1/3 flyers is not terrible. If you're playing 2 5-cost stealth cards, I think that might be enough, right? Lucent Guide or Carnosaur. If someone plays a turn 5 thing, are you going to play Ambitious Mandevilla on? If it's a Lucent Guide, you play Ambitious Mandevilla, your Mandevilla dies, and they get 2 1/3 flyers, and they're pretty happy with that trade. But if you don't kill it, it's a Carnosaur, then everything gets killer, right? So that's the fork that this card's looking for.
I guess. It means playing Lucent Guide in your deck, and I think that's a pretty big cost on its own. Okay, let's talk about the next one. Waystone Core is a fast relic. I think it's the only fast relic in the game. 5-cost, double time, +0 maximum power. At the end of the enemy turn, Waystone Core gets +1 maximum power. Then if it has 5 or more, sacrifice it to draw 5 cards. It's kind of interesting. It looks like it has +0 maximum power, but it really gets +1, because by the time it becomes your turn again, then you'll get that +1 maximum power. Or at least that's how I'm reading it. I don't think this is good. I think it's just like too slow, and then losing all of your power in order to draw cards. You know what you like to have when you have a lot of cards? It's power. So it's too slow. It doesn't really do that much. It's too expensive to be a ramp. I just don't think this card is very good.
This card is very, very,
Okay, the next
very.
card, Steyer's Eyes. This one has a lot of attention from players in the set, and for good reason, I think. This is a 2-cost, 2/2 flying Valkyrie in Justice, single Justice, and has Summon. You may discard a card to play an Agitator's Gavel, Lingering Influence, or Crown Watch Tactic. I saw a traitor because I'm far away from my monitor. I was like, what? They changed it? No. Okay, so this card seems very good. There have been so many times where I've been building the Kira deck and just looking for another unit to put in it at 2, hopefully to be a Valkyrie for Valkyrie Warp and or other synergies we have with Valkyries. And this fits the bill. Of course, they nerfed Lord Steyer's Tower so that the Valkyrie Warp is a lot less relevant. But I still think that this card is very good, and I think it's going to have a lot of collateral damage, just like people are going to play it for its base rate, and it's going to make it very difficult to make decks that rely on the void a good choice.
This card is easily not close the best card in the mini set. Sunny's always like, which card do you think is going to get nerfed? I think this card is going to get nerfed. I very rarely say that I think a card is going to get nerfed. This card is just, it's so good. It's so good. Like, the worst case scenario for this card, like, if you literally can't use effects for any other form of synergy, for anything at all, and you have, like, no units ever in your deck, the worst case scenario for this card is a 2-cost 2/2 flyer that says Summon Plunder, then Scout. A card that says Summon Plunder, then Scout on a 2-cost 2/2 flyer is already a really good rate for a card. And this card is a lot better than that because it has so much synergy potential. It has other forms of mode. It's not just Plunder, then Scout, right? Beyond that, it has a huge life swing with Crown Watch Tactic. It can, incidentally kill opponents' graveyards as well as, provide curses. And it also discards cards, which means that, it's just better than if it was just plundering by itself because discarding cards is powerful. Plus, it plays spells, which could have spell synergy. It can feel the void by putting 2 cards in the void, which is, not terrible in turn 2. And on top of that, it's just a 2/2 flying Valkyrie, which means it has a relevant unit type, relevant flying. In Throne Kira, this card is going to be, easily one of the best cards in Throne Kira because it basically makes the deck so much more consistent. Kira just likes having random flyers. Do you know how many times I've played a random 5-cost 3/3 flyer in Kira and been super happy with my turn? All the time. This card's insane. This card's literally insane.
Well, now you can, instead of playing that random 5-cost 3/3 flyer, you can discard it and you can draw a card because you're playing Crown Watch Tactic on one of your heroes or whatever.
It's so good. This card's so good.
Yeah, I can't really believe how good this card is either. I'm not, expressing it as much as Stormblessed might be, but let me find exactly what I said when they spoiled it. My first words were, "Welp, this strikes me as being way too good." So that's basically where I stand. One thing to mention is that one downside that doesn't have compared to Plunder is that you can't fix. You're
That is
just
true.
going to get a Justice Sigil, and you have to have Justice Sigils in your deck. So, like, I could see, like, in Throne, this somehow not making the cut for a deck that doesn't want to play sigils, but like it's a pretty strong reason to play sigils. And the other thing is that I can't get a treasure trove, but like a scout is pretty good in that regard too. I think it's better to get like lingering influence plus scout.
I guess it can't make a trove, but like in the terms where you make a trove, you just play a Crown Watch Tactic instead. I'd rather play a Crown Watch Tactic than a treasure trove, especially when it's free, right? This card even works with like Jet, right? It puts a sigil in your hand, and then you can play with Jet. If there's like a Rakano aggro deck in Throne, this card's just great.
It's pretty unreasonable. I think it should be just double justice or 2/1 at the very least, and then it's still probably good.
So the other thing I was thinking of as far as nerfs would go is instead of just playing the card straight out, it would create and draw it in your hand. That does change the card. The first 2 modes just become 3-cost versions, which is fair. But it does change the gameplay of the Crown Watch tactic, where you could just, hold the tactic in hand for a very long time. But I think overall, I think that's probably where the nerf might go, is just create and draw rather than just play.
Yeah, that does make sense. I mean, it cuts down on free effects. It's not free the same way as like Elding or Felrock were, but you're getting back your power.
Imagine this card if Elding was unnerfed, where like you sack imagine this card, but it's a 4/4 flyer instead of a 2-cost flyer.
All right, so this card is very good. You should play it if you're playing Justice, as Stormblessed said. The next card you should not play: Auren Condemnation, 3-cost double justice. Kill an attacking enemy unit. You gain armor equal to its attack. It's a fast spell. Can we move on?
This card is for the Waystone Core deck because it lets you utilize your fast speed power. If they don't do anything, then you play a Waystone Core on 5.
Okay. Multiple cards that I don't want to be playing.
Anyways, let's talk about good cards. We have Jada Peacekeeper is 3 Justice for a 4/5 soldier, so it can be got off Dovid, and it also has stealth. And when Jada blocks or is blocked, play a Justice Sigil from your deck depleted, and he gets -4 attack this turn. So this card is also really good, but not quite as ubiquitous as Steyer's Eyes for a number of reasons. Because Steyer's just fits in like basically everything. This card really wants to be in a deck that both is aggro and can utilize high amounts of power, right? So you want to be able to take advantage of both sides of the card, whether it be hitting for 5 or it be ramping you out of your deck. And there are a couple decks that do that. Namely right now, Huru Soldiers with Davi at the top can put on some aggression with Dovids and Steyer's Eyes and Jada. Or if they block whatever, then you can ramp into Davi and get some value that way. And then beyond that, obviously in Throne, we have Kira, which can utilize every side of this card where it wants to get lots of power so it can cycle through spells, play palaces, or just ramp up to having Kira having 8 Justice. And also can just utilize the 4/5 body and beat down. So I think that this card's really good, but a bit more situational than Steyer's Eyes.
This card's really difficult to evaluate, and I suspect it's not good. I thought, when my first impression is oh, this card does a lot of things that I like doing. But I just feel like the Punisher effect of it, like the fact that your opponent gets to choose what happens at any given time, makes it just not able to do what you need it to do at the right time. I do think that there is a great play pattern for this, in which case, you play this as a stealth unit, your opponent doesn't know it's this, and attacks into it, and then you get the free Justice Sigil, and then you get to use it immediately. So, that is really interesting. But aside from that, I think that, what's going to happen is, they'll get double blocked or something and die, and all you get is a Justice Sigil. You don't trade it off with one of the opposing units. Or, your opponent can take a few hits from it, but then negate it later with any sort of unit blocking it. So I actually suspect that this card is not going to be good enough. The upside is definitely there, but I don't think that that's how it's going to play out in actual game.
But imagine with Hojin, if they block it or it blocks, Hojin gets buffed, and then you can do Hojin shenanigans.
I guess.
It makes the card so much more harder, because say they know it's Jada, right? Because in Kira, you're probably not playing any other stealth units. You have a Hojin on 2, you play Power Jada. Next turn, you play Power, attack with Hojin and Jada. What do? We have a 4/3 Hojin. If they block Jada, Hojin's now a 6/5. If they block Hojin, Hojin's already a 4/3, then you can play a spell on it. It just provides all sorts of problems for the opponent.
Well, I mean, even if it is just a 4/5 that doesn't really have text, is that good for 3? I don't know. Prism Golem makes its way into decks, yes, but I don't know if it compares favorably. Even if it does, I don't know if that's good enough for a deck. Decks are just, generally speaking, are just trying to, do too much. There's too much synergy going on with it. Do you get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying, and you're sort of convincing me, although I still think the card has power, but I definitely can see where you're coming from, and I'm not super opposed to it.
As I said, I think that this card is just really difficult to evaluate, and I think it's going to be the card that people are most wrong about. Not because they are poor at evaluating cards, just because, it's very difficult to correctly evaluate. So it might be a lot better than people are saying, or it might be a lot worse, and I wouldn't be surprised either way.
Okay, so we have Dazzling Revelation. We're moving on to the primal cards now. This is 2 and a primal for a fast spell, and it says stun 3 attacking enemy units. Now, I haven't played this card specifically, but I assume it still can be played if they only have 1 or 2 attacking enemy units. If they need to have 3 attacking enemy units, this card is complete garbage. You should never play it. So I'm assuming that it works the way that would make the card not unplayable. So given that it says stun 1, 2, or 3 attacking units, how do you think of Dazzling Revelation?
I think it's an interesting market card. It buys you 2 turns of attacks and sets up a sweeper later on. I'm not exactly sure what type of deck wants it. I don't know, if that deck exists in Expedition, but I do think that, as a one-time effect, it can be pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's got a lot of tempo. This is obviously draft, but draft, we had Flash Fire, Flash Freeze, and that was 3 cost stun 2 units, which yes, sometimes worked otherwise, but oftentimes would be you stun 2 attacking enemy units, and that card was pretty reasonable in draft. And this card's obviously cheaper and better in that use case, and so it obviously doesn't necessarily work if you're the aggro and the opponent's not attacking. But the card does provide a lot of interesting tempo gain for, not necessarily the high cost. But I think ultimately it kind of feels like it might succumb to sort of the Auren Condemnation side of things, where it's like, it's definitely cheaper. 2 is a lot less than 3, especially if you're holding up power. I don't know. I don't think the card's not going to get there, unfortunately.
Well, yeah. The other thing is that one benefit to having a stun spell like that is that sometimes you can get them to attack into your unit and like eat something while stunning other units.
Yeah.
If you're forced to stun 3 units if they have them, that's actually a downside because you might be stunning a unit you might be otherwise eating.
Want to kill?
So yeah,
that's true.
So like that's kind of interesting.
If you attack with like, a 2/2 and the Amarak, to get the Amarak buffed or whatever, and they're like I'm just gonna throw the 2/2 because I have a 4/4 coming in, whatever. If you have to stun all 3 units, the 2/2, the Amarak, and the 4/4 Hound, then you can't eat the 2/2, which you'd otherwise would have loved to do.
So it's interesting. This is a card that might be situationally pretty good, but it also just might be terrible because that's what it looks like on the face of it. All right, let's talk about another card that I think this card's really difficult to evaluate as well. Iron Ursa is a 3-cost primal card. It's a 3/2 Overwhelm, Reckless, Stealth, Intrigue 2/2/2, and ultimate when the enemy player plays a spell, reveal Iron Ursa to negate it. So I think a play pattern that might happen is you play this Stealth on turn 3. Your opponent plays a spell at the end of your turn. If they play it on their turn, or if they play it on your turn before combat happens, like before they get hit by stuff, then it's negated. And I think that makes this pretty interesting. It's a very difficult card to evaluate because it's going to change the way that your opponent plays. But like if your opponent's holding up like 3 power for Wisdom of the Elders and you play Iron Ursa, that's making their line look pretty embarrassing. So they're obviously just not going to play the Wisdom of Elders. So I think this is a pretty interesting card. I suspect it's pretty good, especially with the flexibility for Intrigue. But, it might just run into Dovids all day. That's also a possibility. So what do you think, Stormblessed?
My first impression of the card was that it wasn't going to be very good because the cards that look like this have basically never been that great except for one time, and then it got nerfed. And even then, it was a very interesting case where that happened.
Wait, which one?
Wasn't there like a 3/2 flyer that had like Exalted?
Did that get nerfed? That was really good. That was really good in like the Elysian decks.
Didn't it get nerfed to a 3/1?
Maybe, but it was still good.
I mean, whatever happened, something happened and then it fell out of favor.
I think like it was just because that Elysian deck was awesome, and then the Expedition format changed. Like it was an Expedition deck.
I think it got nerfed and then it became a lot less good once it got nerfed, I believe is what happened. But anyways, either way, cards like that have had a hard time breaking in. This card, when I was looking at it closer, I thought the card would get a lot better. I think the Intrigue does add a lot to it. I think if it just had to be a 3-cost 3/2, it'd be a lot worse. I think making it be able to play a 5/4, specifically because it has Reckless, that's why the Intrigue is good. Obviously, it has to have Reckless because otherwise it would just be like absurd.
Yeah.
But the fact that it has Reckless makes the Intrigue good because it means that, on turn 5, when your opponent has bigger things, you can still play it for a bigger effect, and you're not just throwing it away. The fact is, this card is super disruptive. If you play like Amarak into this, you just have this huge tempo swing on your opponent who can't play spells to try to interact with it until you attack, and you can get that extra, +2 hit in. So for one turn cycle, basically, your opponent can't play spells, and a lot of times if you're playing an aggro deck, one turn is all you need, right? Sometimes all you need is one turn.
Yeah, I think when you're playing this, you need some way to help it through because the Reckless, like you either need to be so aggressive that they're overwhelmed when it comes to blockers, or you need to have some way of like buffing your units so that this doesn't just, get eaten by something. But I do think that like this is going to be better than people are giving it credit for.
Oh yeah, I agree.
By the way, I looked up Daring Griffin and it's still a 3/1 that costs 4. Like it still has Exalted.
Well, yeah, my point was that it was a 3/2 originally.
I guess, but like that didn't change that much of how good it was. Anyway, that one had Exalted, which helped it out a lot because it would give another unit flying, and you'd have something huge. All right, this next card I think is quite good. 4-cost, 4/5 double primal Ulixa, the Unspoken Terror. Pay 3 to deal 1 damage to an enemy. Summon, transform each card with cost 6 or more in hand and Void into a random card of the same factions. Each hand in Void. That does it for both players. And it seems pretty disruptive for control decks. It's kind of big. Just its stat line is not particularly great against control decks, I think, generally speaking. I don't know. Maybe there's no Annihilate in the Expedition. Do you know if Annihilate's an Expedition? I think it's just Defile.
Yeah, there's no Annihilate in Expedition.
Yeah. So, like, maybe removal doesn't line up well against this. Like, if you permafrost it, it can still do the pinging effect. I think this card is going to be sneaky good. And one other thing is that Torgov, which is currently in that slot for a lot of decks, the 4/5 that becomes bigger, this can actually attack into Torgov, because if they block, if they try to make them bounce, this will get to ping it after combat and get to eat it for free. So yeah, I like this card. I think it's going to be pretty good. It's going to be disruptive for decks that are trying to go big. But then again, if you're trying to go big, then that's your fault anyway.
Well, I mean, right now there's a number of good things at the big end. Specifically, the two cards that are the biggest are Davi and Fall to Ruin. I mean, there are others, I believe, I think like Channel if you're playing the Channel stuffs, but Davi and Fall to Ruin are the biggest things, right? And this card transforms both of them. Amusingly, if there was a format that was only this campaign, this card wouldn't do anything because there are no cards that cost 6 or more in this campaign, in these 20 cards being released. Which I thought was just kind of funny, This card's interesting. I think obviously the comparison is to Torgov because they're both 4 primal 4/5s. Also, the other card compared to is Valise, right? Because Valise is a 4-cost 4/4. I mean, they all fit in slightly different decks, so I guess it's tough. I think this card evaluating is tough because you really have to have a significant number of matchups where you want the second effect, I feel. Otherwise, I think Torgov is probably better on the whole because I think looting and potentially being, giant is great, especially if you're playing like Steyer's Eyes, as I said earlier. It lets you fill up your void very quickly.
Yeah.
By very quickly, I mean you put 2 cards in your void, which is not super quick, but getting to 10 and making it a 7/8 is really big. So I think you're really banking on the secondary effect in a sense, which I think could definitely have a place though. And the first effect's not terrible either, right? Paying 3 to deal 1 can just ping off some small units.
Yeah, I think you're right about this. There are going to be different situations where each one is better. And I think you're right. Like, the potential to be big if there's no disruption on Ulixa, that's going to be bigger. But it is worth noting that, like, Davia is one of the most powerful cards in Expedition. Yep. And this does number on that, both by getting rid of any big spell that might be in the void. Although I don't know if people are casting anything that costs more than 6, but also getting rid of Davia from hand.
It really will reward deck building in a sense, right? Proper deck building, proper evaluating of the metagame to decide whether you're playing Valise, Torgov, or Elixir, depending on what your deck wants and what you think the metagame is going to be and what synergizes best.
Yeah. Okay, the next card. The 1 card counter to Diabolic Machinations, although we don't really have to worry about that anymore. Sinister Rumors, a 1-cost shadow card. It's a modal. It says, kill an exhausted unit with 3 attack or less, or draw a unit from your void, or the enemy player discards each copy of a spell of your choice from their deck. So this does number on combo decks. It's like extremely hard to beat this for a lot of combo decks. Well, I don't know if I should say a lot of combo decks, but if a deck is relying too much on one spell, this definitely does number on that. Kind of a slow suffocate if your opponent is attacking, or a Raise Dead.
That obviously has a lot of power right there, being able to, choose which one is better in the proper situation, right? If you're a control deck, you'd rather Dark Return. And if they're an aggro deck, you'd rather Suffocate. And so being able to choose makes this card really good. And the third mode is basically not that great, but there are situations where it could be useful. But yeah, I think this card is overall very good.
Another card that is difficult to evaluate, and I think that's like kind of a theme we're seeing with these cards. I don't think it's good enough. Like, Execute has been around for a long time, kill an exhausted enemy unit, and it hasn't seen play. And I think there's a reason for that. And I think that's just because the cost of a unit being exhausted in order to kill it is just way, way higher than we all think. So I think that first mode is not nearly as good as we think it is. And then, well, basically it's just like the middle mode I think is pretty good, but you better have like some big reason to recur units in order for it to be good enough. And then like have the other 2 modes, which are based on what your opponent is doing, so you can't really control it, and then have those be bonuses.
I think that the reason that Execute is bad is because it costs 3, but Auren Condemnation costing 1 is Defiance, and Defiance is really, really good. So I think that the reason that Execute is bad is not because it kills an exhausted unit. Now, mind you, exhausted is a lot worse because they have to hit you once. But this card does have the split potential of, doing other things. And let's just talk about the third mode for a second here, because the third mode is going to be overvalued and overplayed by a lot of people. Because if the opponent has the card in hand that you want to hit with Sinister Rumors, then you don't actually get that much of a benefit, right? If you want to go for Harsh Rule and you play Sinister Rumors, and the opponent discards 3 Harsh Rules from their deck, they have 1 in hand, and so they still can board clear you. And so your goal of trying to prevent them from board clearing you Doesn't happen. Also, if they have two types of board clears, say if they're playing cover from the storm and fall to ruin, then that also wouldn't necessarily happen. But let's say your goal is to do that, right? Let's say you hit 3 Harshals and you feel great about your life. If the game goes on for 10 more turns, they would have an approximately 50% chance to draw a harsh roll. You basically change the coin flip from your opponent being able to do it to nothing, but you've spent a whole card to do it and your turn 1, or depending on when you do it. So it's not that good of an effect. There are situations in open deck list specifically, the third effect could have some quite powerful uses. Even in the open deck list, I still think the third mode's not that good. And by that I mean it's not very good at all.
I don't think it's even worth giving people hope. It's like, okay, maybe you get to negate one of your opponent's cards, but your opponent already negated one of your cards by making you play 4 copies of this. So I really don't think that's that good. And back on the execute thing, like, we're talking about an age where people were playing like Feeding Time or Death Strike. So like, people were playing those cards over execute.
That is fair.
Yeah. This one's a really interesting one. Mimicry Vine is a 3-cost double shadow 3/3. Has stealth, it's Mandrake, and says ultimate. When one or more of your other units use ultimate or summon abilities, reveal Mimicry Vine to have them get those effects again. So I'm trying to think of like if there's some way to double up on this, because it is an ultimate effect. If you can get multiple effects at once by a bunch of units getting ultimate at the same time. But as is the case with like clones, I think that you'd rather just have a good 3-drop that does something right when you play it than trying to, copy one of your other units.
I'm not quite so sure about that. I think this card is possibly pretty good. Mandrakes isn't much of a thing anymore, but if in the Mandrake deck, I think this card could be very solid because we don't really have the 3-drop, right? There's not, play a good 3-drop, but what if the 3-drop doesn't exist? And doubling on a powerful summon is very good. Obviously, the sort of the best case scenarios with the really, really good ones like Davia, right? That's the dream, is you play this and the next one you play a Davia. But I think that the card, doubling on ultimates means that, I don't know exactly how it works, but if it doubles it or whatever, you can trigger 3 ultimates at once and then, get 3 ultimates for your Mandrake effects, and that could be very good by itself. It passes the vanilla test, right? Unlike Awakened Arsonist, this is a 3-cost 3 stealth, which is already going to, be fine. It's not great, but it's not horrible, and it has some good upside to go along with it. So I kind of think this card could see play.
I'm just trying to think of effects that you would like. Davia, maybe, sure, but like trying to get a 3-drop and then a 7-drop, like that being your combo is not reliable at all. And I really think that it needs to do more than just be a 3/3 in order to be worth much of anything.
It probably doesn't play well with Mandavia, unfortunately, is my guess. Mandavia probably just kills the same thing twice and then takes, -2 times the power and toughness, and then just would obviously die. So it probably doesn't play with Mandavia, unfortunately. In Throne, you have, in a sense, slightly better effects, right? There's the Radiant that costs 4 that has Death Touch and makes the Time Guardian or whatever. I'm blanking up the card name.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Spiteling.
Yeah.
That's one of your favorite cards.
Spiteling. Yeah, Spiteling. Curves into Spiteling, doubling up on making extra Spitelings is really cool. That being said, as Sunny said, it has the downside of just doing nothing, right, on its own, in a sense, of just being a 3/3 on its own, which is not insignificant. Theme of the set, card that's hard to evaluate. You're sensing a theme here.
Yeah, you also have to reveal this, so I'm really low on this card.
I wish a lot of these stealth cards didn't have to be revealed to do it, because I get that there's sort of the counterplay here, but like, I guess this card might have been too good if you could just like play it and then there's no counterplay aside from straight up killing it. But the thing is like since you have to reveal it, it means you can't play it on turn 3 and then 4 turns later play a Davia. If you ever attack with this, right, if you ever attack or block this before getting the ultimate off, then you just have a 3/3, and that's sort of the big problem with a lot of these stealth cards, is that you have to reveal them. Sometimes the reveal text results in good gameplay, like with Iron Ursa, with having Reckless, and sometimes it doesn't matter with Lucent Guide, where its ultimate for revealing it is just super irrelevant. And then sometimes the revealing it makes the card, certainly makes the gameplay interesting, but it also makes the card, a lot worse, which is possibly the point. Anyways, so let's move on to another card that's probably terrible, but also somewhat hard to evaluate. Inevitable Corruption is 5 shadow for a spell. Choose even or odd. The enemy player discards all non-power cards with that cost from their hand. So basically, this card is a market card that destroys even-handed golem decks. Because if you play this versus an even deck, you're like, I choose even! And the opponent loses every card from their hand, and then you win the game. That's the dream, right, Sunny?
Yeah, I think the only reason you would ever play this is in the market to deal with an even menace. Because, first of all, it's really bad in multiples. Once they've discarded all their cards, they're just going to play whatever is on the top of their deck, and then it doesn't do anything. And second of all, it only does anything against even decks. I mean, decks have curves, they have cards that are even and odd. This is just, it's pretty ridiculous. You have to like devote an entire market slot to dealing with even decks, and even then, like, you have to be in a good spot on the board in order to play it.
Yeah, that's the other thing about it, is that it's a 5-cost do nothing in a sense. And the do nothing is especially manifest versus non-even decks, right? The Ungol's Might is sort of a 5-cost do nothing, but its do nothing is that it draws you 4 cards, lets you do something a lot next turn, basically. It might see some play versus non-even decks and open deck lists. But like, for example, versus Kira, it might look reasonable effect versus Kira in a sense of like, you can either take their spells or take their units, but the problem is that it's a 5-cost do nothing if the opponent's behind on board. And if you're behind on board, versus like a Kira deck and you play this, you'll just die because you played 5-cost do nothing. The reason that it's again super good against even decks is that they can't get on board quite as quickly because they don't have a curve, which is why this card really feels like it says the enemy player discards all non-power cards that are even. Effectively.
Yeah.
It's so hard to use otherwise because even decks have only the one type of cost and can't be on board quite as enough. So basically, it's just a market card for even decks if you really hate even decks, which is fine. It's good, I guess.
Yeah, sure. All right, this next one's a big one. Varbuk, Hand of Anarchy. This is a 4-cost, double fire, double justice, 4/3 charge valor, Minotaur Soldier. Summon, kill an enemy, multi-faction unit or relic. This card is huge. Oh boy, it just kills things that your opponent invested a lot of resources into, and then it attacks for 4. It's also kind of difficult to block, and yeah, someone said that this card wasn't very good. I think that was Ilya, by the way. That was the craziest take I've read.
Yeah.
I think this card is so good.
Yeah, it's not a perfect card. Also, I will say that I really wish that this card was a bit more clear in its text. I wish it said, kill a relic or a multi-faction enemy unit. Or if it was, basically clarifying, does the relic need to be multi-faction or is any relic? Now, mind you, it's probably any relic because multi-faction relics are less common and relics are already uncommon to begin with, where the cards are obviously supposed to be somewhat situational with this effect. So it's probably any relic, but that being said, it's very unclear, so I wish it was slightly more clear. But yeah, I think the card's really good. I think the card could make a Rakano deck more of a thing, right? We got a couple really interesting Rakano aggro cards. We have League Explorer, Steyer's Eyes. I mean, just good Rakano cards in general. And this card's really powerful. Yes, not everyone plays multi-faction units. It does kill Dovids, though, and everyone loves them some Dovids. I think this card is very good. It needs to have the right deck. It needs to specifically be a Rakano aggro deck existing. But Charge Valor 4/3. Charge works with Houndmaster. Any sort of charge works with the 2 attack units. It's possible it won't see any play. If multi-faction units don't exist, then it wouldn't see any play, but they do exist, so I like the card.
Just think of how many people play Sycilus or have played Sycilus in the past. This is like Sycilus that kills something. I guess it's actually not too different from the Stone Scar Bandit thingy.
Bhutan?
The 5/2. Yeah, Bhutan. Well,
do you hate the card now? It looks like Bhutan.
This works on its own, which is, pretty different and much more difficult to play around.
Importantly, it's also a lot cheaper on the influence. Bhutan has 6 influence pips, and this has 4. Now, 4 could be a lot in Expedition, right? It's very hard to splash this or splash another faction if you're playing this. That being said, Varbuk also can get off Dovid. It's also a soldier. Also, Varbuk kills Varbuk. Apparently, Varbuk really hates themselves. That's all I'm saying. In the mirror, that could be so annoying, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And because, you can't just not play a 4/3 charge if you have nothing better to do. And then if your opponent, fires back and kills yours, then that feels terrible. So, yeah, I think this card is really good. I think that it is going to be a big draw to Rakano decks, Rakano aggro decks over Amphitheater.
If the card becomes very good, it's a big draw to, not play multi-faction units or limit them drastically. Limit your relics. It's interesting. Never mind. I'm still thinking about Rocket Blaster for some stupid reason. I need to get off that stupid Rocket Blaster train.
All right, next card, Hexdriver. It's a 3-cost, a Primal Fire, 2/3 relic weapon. When you play a spell, Hexdriver gets +2 attack this turn, which can be done multiple times. Well, I just don't think it's reliable enough, and it's not big enough to work toward, in my opinion.
If it was a 3/3 base or a 3/2 base, I could see this card maybe being there. Or if it was a 2/4 even. because, if your opponent has just like a 3/3, if they have a stealth unit in play and you have Hexdriver, do you attack with it? If it's Mimicry Vine, you lose. If it's Awakened Arsonist, you also still lose. It's good. It's good versus Steyer's Eyes, I guess. It's good specifically like on the play versus 2-drops.
Yeah, that's way too specific.
Yeah, but the problem is that if your goal is to make it a 4/3, you have to be playing it on turn 4 at the latest, because unless you're playing like power cells or something.
Yeah, it's also a temporary buff. Like, yeah, I just don't think that this card has enough going for it.
I can see maybe some sort of combo potential, but the other problem with it is it doesn't have unblockable. So if you want to use it to kill the opponent, the board has to be clear. It's a cool design, and I think there are people that are going to love playing with the card, and I'm glad it exists, but I just don't think it's like tier 1 competitive.
All right, the next card I think is really interesting. This I hadn't seen this card before the set released, but I think it might be pretty good. So this is Kehanya, Skilled Caster, 3-cost, time, primal, 2/4. It's a mage, not a relevant unit type. Has endurance, summon, silence an enemy unit with cost 2 or less, or deal 2 damage to enemy player or site. So it's got a lot of stuff going on for it. It's pretty difficult to remove. Plays some good defense and works well against some small units, and also kind of pressures sites. What do you think about this?
My first thought, for some reason, is Throne, Mother of Skies. It's a unit that interacts with the board and is multi-faction, and so that always makes me think Mother of Skies, because it's also cheap, right? So that curves into each other. Obviously, the biggest downside of the card is that it's a 3-cost 2/4, which is not necessarily going to be with a stat line, right? You were saying, like, is a 3-cost 4 or 5 good enough? This is a 3-cost 2/4. I think you really want to be playing it in some sort of aggressive deck, right? That's the key. Is because in an aggressive deck you can use.
Are you sure? I don't know.
I mean, maybe it's just good in like everything, but the reason I think it's best in an aggressive deck is because in an aggressive deck you get a use out of it no matter what. Let's say the opponent isn't playing any units or sites or whatever. If you don't care about 2 damage on the opponent's face, it's just a 3-cost 2/4. But if you care about 2 damage on the opponent's face, then no matter what, you're always getting some value out of it, right? And there will be times where silencing a unit or killing him in fight doesn't matter or doesn't happen. Now, in Expedition, I think it's probably a lot better, because there's probably going to be more opportunities to silence something, because there's just more people playing small units. I believe that's not the case in Expedition. Although in Throne, it's also a lot of people playing that, but like there's also more unitless decks in Throne. So, the card has a good power level, though, right? It works against Kira decks. It seems very good against Kira decks.
Yeah.
Maybe it is just great, and I'm just underrating it slightly, but I do think you want to be aggressive with it.
Yeah. The closest thing to it is Valkyrie Enforcer, right? Your opponent plays Initiative Sands or whatever, and you like look at your Valkyrie Enforcer and you're like, in 2 turns I'm going to get them. And I think this is pretty similar. Like, your opponent plays a card on turn 1 or 2, you play Kehanya, and you negate their unit and get a body to go along with it. I think that one of this card's big benefits is that it gives you a way to pressure sites if you're not attacking. Like, relic weapons don't pressure sites. A lot of cards that deal with units don't pressure sites. But like, if you're sitting back, this gives you a way to deal with Malaga Amphitheater, or maybe in Throne, Thudrock's Masterpiece, that you wouldn't otherwise have. And I think that's a pretty big deal on this one. The body is pretty regrettable. Like, a 2/4 endurance is pretty useless. But the effect is really interesting. It gives you like something you can't really do much in Elysian. And that is, as you said, have a unit that just affects the board.
I love units that affect the board. Those are some of my favorite things. I just think that you really want to be pairing this with some form of an aggressive strategy to get the best use out of it. Because, as you said, a 2/4 endurance is a lot less good of a body than a 3/3 flyer. Now, its effect is probably on the whole slightly better than Valkyrie Enforcer's summon text, maybe. But, being some of those 3-cost things is not irrelevant either, obviously.
Yeah, I think Valkyrie Enforcer is way better. All right, you want another one? Azindel Mastermind, 5-cost, Xenon card, single time, single shadow. It has lifesteal and stealth. It's a radiant. Ultimate, at the start of your turn, reveal Azindel to play the top card of each player's deck. Azindel gets +2/+2 for each power card played this way. Worse than Worldbearer Behemoth, so I don't think that this is going to make any impact on Throne. But, it is pretty similar to Worldbearer Behemoth, where if you get to survive with it a turn, you get a pretty nice payoff.
Is it worse than Worldbearer Behemoth? It probably is, because
definitely.
It's 6/7 versus 4/4. But A, Expedition doesn't have Worldbearer Behemoth. But B, this card, it has lifesteal, which in some cases can be better than a 6/7. It's not just power, right? If it plays more Azindels, if it plays your opponent's big thing, playing 2 random cards is better than playing 2 random powers on the whole, right? So like, its effect is very different. And of course, as I said, Direwolf really wants 5-cost Xenon Stealth to be a thing, right? Here's another 5-cost Xenon Stealth card. I'm not kidding when I say that they want this deck to exist. This card, I think, is a card that definitely deserves to have the reveal text on it, because you should definitely be able to interact with it more so than just like being able to ping it, with any sort of ping effect and stopping its effect going off, I think is very good to have. You don't just have to kill the thing outright, because this card's effect is quite strong if it goes off. Now the question is, will 5-cost 4/4 be good enough? It does have lifesteal, right? So even if it has to block your opponent's aggro cards, you're not super upset about it either, because you at least get to, get some 4 life back and trade with something. So I think this card is potentially very, very good. Again, hard to evaluate though. Who would have thought?
Yeah, if you're ramping in a time deck and Expedition, I think this is probably your best payoff, because if you can play this on turn 3 or 4, it's just the best card that you can play ahead of schedule, I think. It gets some built-in card advantage, the same way World Bear Behemoth goes. One thing I should have mentioned is that Behemoth, one of the big reason that we're seeing that now again is because it works so well with Twilight Hunt. And that's actually something that we've had for a while in Eternal, but people are using it a lot more now. Anyway, World Bear Behemoth is just like way better than this card, but I do think that in Expedition, this might be worth ramping into. And there are 2 1-cost units that ramp out stealth units, right? There's Logistics Expert and the one that makes stealth units 1 cost cheaper. So playing this ahead of schedule, if you can get this down on turn 3 or turn 4, I think that's a really big deal.
Even if you were to, say, play the other ramp card, that Open Way Supplier, very good ramp card. If you give this killer, A, you can wait for the killer effect, right? You don't have to kill her immediately. And B, if you have to kill her immediately, I don't think you're that upset even, right? If you have to kill her a 3/3 flyer with this card, yeah, you don't get the ultimate, you're like, at this point, you don't get super value, but you're killing your opponent's thing and you're getting 4 life out of it. Now, the card that this card hates the most is obviously going to be Ambitious Mandevilla, because they get to keep a 1/1 around and their unit just dies. But yeah, I think on the whole, especially if you're playing other Xenon stealth cards like Slug or something, you only want 2 or 3 stealth cards. But if you can really present this fork to your opponent, right? You like, is this Lucent Guide? Is this Slug? Is this Carnosaur? Is this Azindel Mastermind, right? Pick the ones that are best for your deck, for what your game plan is going to be, and you can really put them in a bind.
Yeah, I think that this is going to make an impact on Constructed. All right, next card is Final Confrontation. I love the artwork for this. It's a 5 double justice, double primal spell. Each player chooses one of their units, kill the rest. I think this card is very bad. Yes, I know everyone wants to play it with Davia because then you get to keep the Davia, but it only really works in situations where your opponent has lots of units and none of them are good. And you have a good unit. So like it all has to line up in order for this card to be good. And you have to play both Justice and Primal. So yeah, don't play this card. That's my advice.
This card has some good upside. It's also, interesting that it provides another sort of wrath effect to Expedition, which, the format has not that many of. The problem is, as Suny said, is that if your opponent has 3 units, this card is your opponent sacrifices 2 units, which is a card, we've seen that costs 6. Yes, this card costs 1 less than 6, which is good. But like, how often have you played Eternal? You've played Harsh Rule on a board of 2 enemy units. I've done that a lot. And if you play this against 2 enemy units, they get to keep 1, and it's going to be their best one. And oftentimes that, their best one, in other formats, it might have been, just a 3/3 or whatever. But here, it could be a Dovid, right? Your goal is to kill Dovid. That's like a sub game of Eternal is kill Dovid. If they're playing like, a Soldier's deck, Dovid might be the card they keep because it's likely to be their best card and they don't want it to die even. So I don't know about this card. Maybe Davia Control might play it. Maybe if you're playing Davia Control with Short Hopper instead.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think Short Hopper is the only application of this that I can really see, realistically.
But it's it's a card that it's easier to evaluate, but it still is somewhat hard to evaluate because it is still different. No, I think it is. I think there might be a place for it.
All right, Waystone Alignment, the last card. It's a 1-cost factionless relic. At the start of your turn, sacrifice Waystone Alignment to kill each unit, relic, and site with cost equal to 1. Amplify 2, increase that cost by 1. Yeah, I don't think this one really does that much. So you have to play it like on 3 and then wait a turn to kill your opponent's costs that equal exactly 2. They have to play a lot of cards at the same cost, which we've talked about as having its own inherent disadvantages. And this is just really expensive. Like if you want to deal with 4 drops, you have to pay 7 for it, which is absurd.
This card realistically is only going to ever kill a 1, 2, or 3 cost card, or cost cards plural. I think 2 is its most likely mode, and it might kill 2 things. I think this card would have a place in the format if Condemn was in the format. So I think this card would be very good in the Condemn market because it is situationally very, very powerful. I mean, I don't know if there's like a control deck and Throne that plays Condemn. If there is, that could play Waystone Alignment. But, it has sort of the similar disadvantage as Sinister Rumors, right? Where the unit has to basically already attack once or whatever. It's effectively letting the unit become exhausted by giving it an extra turn to exist. So maybe there are a lot of good 2-drops in the format, right? You have League Explorers and Steyer's Eyes and Amarax, although that has Aegis and Houndmasters. So maybe depending on how the format shakes out, this card could see play, but it's difficult without condemning in the format, I think.
Yeah, I guess Condemn, as a market, might work, but boy, it's slow and expensive, and that's not usually a good combination. That's all 21 cards from the Hour of Glass campaign. The campaign, I think it had its moments, even if, as a whole, it wasn't necessarily as good as, Awakening. I think the one with the Ancestors, was that it? I don't remember.
No,
The one with the
Awakening,
Ancestors, I think, of
the
being
Zolta
as
one?
the best one. Yeah,
The Zolta one? Yeah,
Yeah.
that one, Awakening I thought was kind of poor because it was kind of felt kind of meaningless. It was just Vara having a nightmare.
Oh, that one's okay, yeah, that one. I was thinking about the Ancestors, the one with the fantastic artwork, and this is not that, but it has its moments. There were a few things that I thought were super cool.
I haven't actually made it through all of the campaign yet because I was just busy yesterday. But Forest Traveler, I think, was easily the best campaign thus far.
That was good, yeah. So it's not one of those, but I did enjoy it. All right, so we have to give our top 3 cards of each ones. We need to put our stamp on these. So hopefully I can repeat what I did last time and put my stamp on a card, then win a tournament with it. But yeah, are you ready to go with your top 3, Stormblessed?
I mean, I know what my top 1 is.
So I'm going to be a bit of a contrarian, and well, not with pick number 3, but with my picks in general. I'm going to put Azindel Mastermind as my 3rd best card for the set. I think it's going to be a card that sees a bunch of play in ramp decks and is just going to, have a solid presence in the format. My number 2 is going to be Steyer's Eyes. I don't actually think that this is going to be the best card in the format, and that's not because the card itself isn't totally busted. It is. And what it's going to do to the metagame is ridiculous. But if it's not getting anything out of the Agitator's Gavel, I suspect that its value is going to drop a fair amount. It's just going to mean that people are going to stop playing decks that are weak against Agitator's Gavel. And once that goes away, the card stock goes way down. So it's still going to be good. It's still going to be great, but it's not going to just completely destroy decks as if people didn't know that everyone has 4 Gavel in their main deck that they can play on turn 2. And my number 1 card is going to be Varbuk, Hand of Anarchy, the 4/3 charge value that kills an enemy multi-faction unit or relic.
You're absurd, Suny. You're insane. You're insane. You're an insane man. Putting Steyer's Eyes is not at number 1 and putting Varbuk above it. You're definitely going for the hot take here, I can tell you that much.
Okay, maybe, yeah, I am a bit of a contrarian, so that might be influencing it a little. But let's be real here. If I'm going to try to win a tournament and back up my picks, it's probably going to be with Varbuk. So yeah, it's going to hit people for a lot of damage. It's going to kill a lot of multi-faction cards, and it's going to be impossible to block. So there's my top 3. What's your top 3, Stormblessed?
Oh, I mean, this is slightly tough. I guess my number 3, I'm gonna pick Sinister Rumors as my number 3 pick. I think the card has a interesting potential to get there. A lot of good uses there. I'm gonna pick League Explorer as my number 2 because I think that card has a lot of also good synergy and also has some good aggressive opportunities. And my number 1 will be Steyer's Eyes because I think that card is every Justice deck literally under the sun should play Steyer's Eyes. Even if it doesn't do an Agitator's Gavel, it still has the other 2 modes are also completely insane. And I think that in the Rakano deck, both League Explorer and Steyer's Eyes are going to be great, as is Varbuk, but I think Steyer's Eyes is going to be the best of the 3. And I think Steyer's Eyes is completely absurd.
All right, well, there you have it. Last time, I think Stormblessed ended up being more accurate, picking Crafty
Very
Occultist.
slightly.
I mean, we picked the same 3 cards, but Tara's popularity faded very quickly.
Last time we did it for the big set, right? Everything got nerfed. Then I was slightly right because everything was nerfed.
Yeah, that one doesn't really count. All right, yeah. So enjoy Hour of Glass. Next on our list is the FETL matchups. FETL continues this next week. We're a week and a half out from the Open, so it continues then. And here are the matchups. We have the Team Kill, the Barbarian Camp versus the Snowfort. TBC is 3-0-1 and Snowfort is 3-1. So basically, TBC is ruling the world. And we have CSB versus TRS. Both of those teams are 3-1. We have the 2-2 Team Misplay Teal Trapezoids against the 2-1-1 Team Invoke Lethal. We have the 2-2 Team Eternal Journey versus 2-2 Friends of Eternal. Finally, we have We Stream Games 1, which is 1-2-1 against the Misplay Red Rhombuses, which is 1-3. And We Stream Games 2, which is 0-3-1 against Eternal Titans, which is 0-4 somehow with that stacked roster, which is absolute craziness. So I am awaiting for people to get their final rosters in for that, and we'll see what happens in Week 5 of the Friends of Eternal Team League.
To round out this cast, as always, let's go over some upcoming dates. And we mentioned this on the last couple of times, but now we're actually approaching them. And it's super interesting. The next two T&Es are July 30th and August 3rd, both Expedition T&Es. And that's interesting because it corresponds with the Expedition Open, which is July 30th and August 1st. So we have an Expedition T&E the morning of day one, so we can see how the Expedition moves from T&E to the tournament, and we can see how the format changes across, pre-tournament, during tournament, post-tournament, like right off the bat. Like, how does T&E influence the Open? How does the Open influence T&E? Vice versa, vice. Super interesting. And then, of course, after that, we have the Draft Open just under 2 weeks later on August 13th through August 15th. I'm looking forward to all of it. I think it's going to be super interesting. Yeah, I'm just looking forward to drafting and Expedition and playing with some Steyer's eyes.
Yeah, can't wait for the Draft Open myself. I got top 8 in the last one and hoping to do a little better in the next one. So that'll be fun. All right, as always, FECast is brought to you by our lovely patrons at patreon.com. If you would like to donate and contribute to the cause, you can go to patreon.com/friendsofeternal. We have a new patron, so thank you to the Villipede Army for their support. And of course, the continued support of Telmokus, Odsos, Priweben, Cotillion, Alcide Bava, Work Done Son, Chamomile, Crissier, D-Dub, and Yeastout. And boy, some of them have been with us for months and months and months, over a year for some of these people. So thank you so much for helping support FECast. And of course, thank you to our wonderful editor, SRFS, for the editing and producing of FECast. So thank you again. All right, that's all for this week's episode of FECast. We'll be back next week with, of course, the impact of Hour of Glass on Expedition, and we'll be getting you ready for the Expedition Open. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, we will see you in the Friend Zone. The Friends of Eternal Discord is the best place on the internet to get better at Eternal. We have players of all skill and experience levels, all happy to help each other out on basically any aspect of their Eternal gameplay. And making all this possible is our generous patrons over at patreon.com. If you'd like to support FECast or Friends of Eternal, consider donating at patreon.com/Friends of Eternal. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, we'll see you in the Friend Zone.